15th April, 1943. North Atlantic, 400 miles west of Ireland. The convoy ploughs through grey, heaving seas under a low ceiling of cloud. Aboard HMS Starling, the senior officer of the escort group stares at the ASDIC operator's screen. The trace is unmistakable. A German U-boat stalking the merchantman from below. The destroyer's captain gives quiet orders. The ship surges forward, her bow wave climbing as she accelerates towards the contact. But this time, something is different. Mounted on her foredeck, just forward of the bridge, sits a peculiar device. 24 stubby barrels arranged in 4 rows, angled slightly upward like a malevolent pipe organ. As the range closes to 200 yards, a single command rings out. In less than a second, all 24 projectiles leap from their launchers in a rippling salvo, arcing forward in a tight elliptical pattern. They splash into the water ahead of the ship, sinking rapidly. Then nothing. The crew holds its breath. Suddenly, the sea erupts. A violent underwater detonation sends a column of water skyward, followed immediately by debris, planking, insulation, oil. The U-boat has died without surfacing, without firing a shot, without even knowing what killed it. This is the Hedgehog, and it fundamentally changed how Britain hunted submarines beneath the waves. The problem facing the Royal Navy in early 1943 was reaching a crisis point. German U-boats were destroying merchant shipping faster than it could be replaced, threatening Britain's very survival as an island nation. In the first quarter of 1943 alone, U-boats sank over 500,000 tons of Allied shipping. The weapon used to fight them, the depth charge, had remained essentially unchanged since the First World War. It was a brutal instrument, effective only through saturation. A typical depth charge pattern required a destroyer to drop between 6 and 14 charges in a diamond or ladder formation, hoping that at least one would detonate within the kill radius of the submerged submarine. The fundamental problem was simple, but devastating. To drop depth charges, a destroyer had to pass directly over the submarine's estimated position. This meant losing ASDIC contact at precisely the moment when accuracy mattered most. The sound beam projected downward and forward from the ship's hull could not detect targets directly beneath the vessel. Captains were forced to estimate where the U-boat would be by the time the charges sank to the correct depth, typically 15 to 20 seconds after release. A U-boat commander, hearing the destroyer's propellers overhead and knowing he had precious seconds, would order emergency changes in depth and direction. Statistical analysis revealed the grim truth. It took an average of over 100 depth charges to destroy a single submarine. Many U-boats survived multiple attacks, slipping away while their hunters fumbled blind. Production facilities struggled to keep pace with consumption. Depth charges were heavy. The Mark VII weighed 420 pounds, requiring substantial storage space aboard destroyers that might carry 70 to 150 charges, depending on class. More critically, each attack run required the escort to abandon its protective station around the convoy, leaving merchantmen vulnerable to other submarines operating in wolf packs. The Admiralty needed a weapon that could kill submarines without sacrificing contact, without outpassing overhead, without giving the enemy time to evade. The solution emerged from the Department of Miscellaneous Weapons Development, a wonderfully British euphemism for experimental ordnance. The Hedgehog was conceived in 1941 by Lieutenant Commander Charles Goodeve and developed at HMS Vernon, the Royal Navy's torpedo and mining school in Portsmouth. The fundamental innovation was elegant. Instead of attacking the submarine after passing over it, fire ahead while ASDIC contact remained firm. The weapon system consisted of 24 spigot mortars arranged in 4 rows of 6, mounted on a steel cradle that could be trained slightly to port or starboard. Each spigot, essentially a steel rod protruding upward, accepted a finned projectile weighing 65 pounds. The projectile itself was a streamlined teardrop shape, roughly 2 feet long, containing 35 pounds of Torpex explosive in its nose. The spigot mortar principle was ingeniously simple. Unlike a conventional gun, where the projectile travels up a barrel, the spigot mortar reversed the arrangement. The projectile slid down over the spigot, which had a small charge at its base. When fired, this charge detonated, driving the projectile upward and forward off the spigot. The system required no heavy breech or barrel, making it extraordinarily light for its throw weight. The entire 24-round installation weighed approximately 4 tons, far less than a conventional gun battery of equivalent firepower. When fired, the Hedgehog threw its projectiles in a circular pattern approximately 130 feet in diameter, with the nearest impacts roughly 200 yards ahead of the firing ship. Flight time was approximately 5 seconds. The projectiles entered the water nose first and sank at a rate of roughly 23 feet per second, considerably faster than a depth charge. Here lay the weapon's most crucial innovation: contact detonation only. Unlike depth charges, which exploded at a preset depth regardless of proximity to the target, Hedgehog projectiles only detonated upon striking something solid. If they hit the submarine's pressure hull, the impact fuse triggered the Torpex charge instantly. If they missed, they sank harmlessly to the seabed. This created an elegant solution to the conformation problem. With depth charges, massive underwater explosions made it impossible to maintain ASDIC contact for minutes afterward, preventing any immediate assessment of success. Captains often claimed kills that were merely temporary damage. The Hedgehog provided binary feedback. Explosion meant a hit. Silence meant a miss. There was no ambiguity, no need to circle back through the turbulence of one's own attack. Manufacturing took place at several facilities, including the Royal Ordnance Factory at Chorley. Estimates suggest several thousand Hedgehog installations were produced between 1942 and 1945, though precise production figures remain partially classified. By mid-1943, the system was being retrofitted to corvettes, frigates, destroyers, and even some armed trawlers, any vessel capable of carrying out anti-submarine warfare. It might detect the salvo entering the water, but by then the projectiles were already plunging toward them. The near simultaneous arrival of 24 high-explosive projectiles in a tight pattern meant nowhere within that circle was safe. Even a submarine attempting to dive or turn found projectiles already in the water around it, descending faster than the boat could maneuver. If you are finding this interesting, a quick subscribe helps more than you know. The Germans attempted ITT. The first confirmed kill using Hedgehog came in December 1941, but operational deployment accelerated dramatically through 1942 and 1943. HMS Bentley destroyed U-628 in July 1943 using Hedgehog after depth charge attacks had failed. The submarine had been damaged but remained submerged and mobile. A single salvo from Bentley's Hedgehog struck home, and the resulting explosion brought debris, oil, and bodies to the surface. Conclusive proof of destruction. Ships equipped with Hedgehog began demonstrating kill rates substantially higher than those using depth charges alone. In the hands of experienced crews, the weapon was devastatingly effective. The key was accurate ASDIC plotting and precise fire control. Operators learned to fire when the range closed to between 200 and 250 yards, allowing minimal time for the submarine to evade after the splash pattern appeared. U-boat survivors later reported the psychological impact of the weapon. The brief flight time, projectiles were airborne for only 5 seconds, gave almost no warning. Hydrophone operator here own forward-throwing weapons, but nothing approached the Hedgehog's combination of simplicity and lethality. Their most comparable system was a rocket-propelled depth charge launcher, but it lacked the precision and rapid-fire capability of the British design. The Americans, recognizing the Hedgehog's effectiveness, adopted it wholesale and manufactured it under license. They also developed the mousetrap, a scaled-down version using 8 projectiles instead of 24, and later the Mark 108 Weapon Alpha, which fired a single large rocket-propelled projectile. These American variants saw extensive service in the Pacific theater. The critical difference between British and German approaches to anti-submarine warfare in this period was fundamentally philosophical. German development focused relentlessly on heavier, more powerful depth charges and improved sonar systems, attempting to overwhelm submarines through sheer destructive force. The British, forced by necessity to husband scarce resources and maximize operational efficiency, pursued weapons that increased hit probability rather than explosive yield. A Hedgehog projectile carried less than 1/10 the explosive of a standard depth charge, 35 pounds versus 420 pounds of ASDIC. Yet the contact detonation against the pressure hull delivered that explosive force exactly where it would cause catastrophic damage, rather than dissipating through water yards away from the target. Statistical analysis from the Admiralty's Anti-Submarine Warfare Division revealed that Hedgehog-equipped ships achieved kills with approximately 25% of attacks that resulted in explosions, meaning 1 in 4 salvos that produced detonations destroyed the target. Given that each salvo represented only 24 projectiles compared to 10 or more depth charges per conventional pattern, the efficiency gain was remarkable. The actual historical impact of the Hedgehog remains subject to careful qualification. No single weapon system won the Battle of the Atlantic. Victory emerged from the intersection of intelligence, tactics, air cover, escort numbers, and weaponry. However, the Hedgehog's contribution was significant and measurable. By 1944, ships equipped with Hedgehog were destroying U-boats at roughly twice the rate of vessels using depth charges alone. The weapon's contact-only detonation meant less disruption to convoy formations and faster prosecution of multiple contacts. Psychological effects on U-boat crews are harder to quantify but appear in survivor testimony. The knowledge that British escorts possessed a weapon that could strike ahead accurately without sacrificing detection contributed to the growing sense among U-boat personnel that the technological balance had shifted against them. The Hedgehog influenced post-war anti-submarine weapon development substantially. The principle of a head-throwing weapons firing while maintaining sonar contact became standard. Modern naval forces use descendants of this concept, Weapons like the ASROC and Ikara systems employ rockets or missiles to deliver torpedoes or depth charges ahead of the launching vessel, maintaining the same principle Goodeve pioneered in 1941. Several Hedgehog installations survive in museums. HMS Belfast, preserved on the Thames in London, retains her Hedgehog mounting. The Imperial War Museum, Duxford, holds examples of the projectiles themselves. These physical remnants offer tangible connection to a weapon that fundamentally altered naval warfare, yet remains largely unknown outside specialist circles. 15th of April, 1943. That salvo from HMS Starling represented more than the destruction of a single U-boat. It demonstrated a principle that would reshape naval warfare, that precision could triumph over raw destructive power, that maintaining contact throughout the attack sequence was worth more than heavier explosives. That silence in the aftermath of an attack could be more informative than the thunder of conventional weapons. The Hedgehog killed submarines efficiently, quietly, and with mathematical certainty. When those 24 projectiles arced through the grey Atlantic air, they carried with them a solution to a problem that had seemed insoluble: how to strike an enemy you could hear but not see, moving in 3 dimensions beneath an opaque surface with enough accuracy to ensure destruction. The weapon's legacy extends well beyond its direct combat record. It proved that lateral thinking applied to weapons design could yield disproportionate results. The Department of Miscellaneous Weapons Development, that wonderfully eccentric British institution, had delivered a system that cost relatively little to manufacture, required minimal modification to existing ships, and increased lethality by an order of magnitude. The U-boat crews who died beneath those Hedgehog barrages never knew they were facing a weapon that represented a fundamental shift in anti-submarine warfare doctrine. They simply heard a brief splash, felt a momentary impact, and then nothing. The North Atlantic claimed them as it had claimed thousands before. But the weapon that sent them to the bottom, a collection of stubber spigot mortars and finned projectiles, had forever changed the calculus of submarine warfare. When the explosions came, the U-boat died. When silence followed the splash, everyone aboard the destroyer knew exactly what it meant. No ambiguity, no uncertainty. Just the simple binary logic of contact detonation and the cold mathematics of war beneath the waves.